Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners. Today we're lucky enough to be joined by Stephane Charbonnier. Stephane is the CHRO for L'Oreal in the USA, or for the whole of the USA, sorry. Stephane, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. I'm very happy to be in the show.
Thanks very much, Stephane. Stephane, fill in the gaps. Tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and your journey to becoming the CHRO for the US for L'Oreal.
Sure. So, Chris, I started actually my career, I want to say 27 years ago, and I worked in Europe and in the US. I've always worked in HR. And to be honest, I ended up in HR a little bit by accident. I always wanted to do business, and when I was in business school, I was a business as major, and the first year I didn't know exactly what to expect. And one of my professor, he was a law professor, actually came to see me after one of the course, and he said, Stephane, I think you should think about moving to HR as a major, because you do understand business, but you also very good with people, and I can see that. And that was the beginning of the story. And that's what really defines me, Chris, is I do consider myself as a business person who eventually knows a little bit more about HR than my colleagues in the room. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. And so since I've been working in a number of companies, always in HR, in multiple roles. And again, as I said, in Europe, I worked in the UK as well for a few years, and I've been in the US now for the past 10 years. And I've had the privilege and the fortune to be given the opportunity to be at the helm of HR for L'Oreal in the US since last February.
Wow, fantastic. And how's the journey been from going from the Europe to the US? Has it been quite a big transition for you?
It was actually it was a pretty smooth transition. I mean, there are always some cultural adjustment and transition you're going through, but that's part of the journey and the excitement as well. I want to say, moving from I started my career in France. And then moved to London for 4 years. It was actually a great transition for me before coming to the US. And as I stayed with my company, I moved from London to the US with the same company, so at least the internal references, sure, cultural elements were fairly consistent. So that helped.
Kind of eased the transition then. For
right.
You.
Right, exactly.
Fantastic. And what would you say is your, obviously you have a remit, a generalist remit, I'm assuming, across all functions within HR for the USA. Yep. But what area would you say is your area of sort of expertise? What area interests you most?
Yeah, so my area of expertise is really the talent area. Mm-hmm. I've had the great pleasure in my career to have a number of HR generalist roles, but I've also led, the talent strategy globally for U.S. corporation, and I want to say this is probably my area of strength as well as my biggest area of interest. I think this is today in the world of HR, being very strong and being very deliberate when it comes to developing and attracting talent is the name of the game.
No, of course. Well, it's key to any business is the people, right? Especially the talent.
Right. Exactly.
So, what's one thing around talent? Do you think that sort of defines your business and L'Oreal, and what do you think that other leaders should be focusing on around talent specifically?
It's interesting. Our founder over a century ago, founded the company on the principle that a company was not about machines and walls and buildings, but all about people. And it's interesting to go back to that philosophy because, L'Oreal has always been extremely focused on attracting and building strong talent. So I want to say it's really at the heart of everything we do, Chris. People, leaders are really committed at every single level to build talent for this organization.
Hmm. And how do you ensure that that's something which is replicated across the business?
This is part of everyone's responsibility. When you are in an organization like L'Oréal, at a certain level, you have part of your objectives and bonus that are actually geared, towards a specific reward, but in building team, in building talent, and this is part of what we're expecting, from leaders at L'Oréal. We have a campus duty in a way where every single leader in the organization has the responsibility to go out and try to identify the future leaders and mentor them and attract them for the organization. So as an example, we have, in L'Oréal in the US, we have 25% of our bonus that are actually focused towards, developing people, whether it's internal team, but also the external attractivity of L'Oréal as an employer.
Fantastic. That's pretty amazing. And I can see already how that would have a huge impact on not just the financial reward, but also it becoming part of the culture of the business as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mentoring, whether it's an informal mentoring or informal or formal, but that is going around, and people are extremely committed to that. They take a lot of pride.
Mm-hmm. I suppose it's a knock-on effect, right? When the sort of more junior managers are brought up through the business with that mentality, seeing that their leaders are operating in that same manner, it's just then going to be a roll-on effect throughout the business and trickle down into the all of the different parts of the business. So
absolutely.
That's fantastic. On a more of a personal note, what sort of occupies your mind on a day-to-day basis?
So, as I took my role actually fairly recently, as I was mentioning, Chris, what's on my mind on a day-to-day basis is really how to, I would say, balance the sort of, company strategy in terms of, development and growing the business. So how do I maximize the shareholders' investment from a value standpoint? But with that in mind, how do I also increase employee engagement? I think this is extremely important, when you're head of HR to be to have both in mind, and that's clearly something that how do you translate that? You could ask me, and actually everything we do in HR, as an example, I always ask myself, is this going to increase employee engagement or not? And This is for me a great compass to measure and gauge whatever we do, and figure out if not, then maybe we're not focusing on the right thing. Mm-hmm. So that's I would say that's what occupies my mind on a day-to-day basis. I would say the parallel of that on the external front is really how do we make sure that we portray the best way possible the attractivity of L'Oréal outside of the organization. We are creating an incredible school of business, and certainly in the U.S., maybe unlike in Europe, but we have a deficit in terms of communication and image with some target here, and this is part of my job to make sure that a few years from now, L'Oréal will be part of the top 10 most admired employer in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure you can't be too far away.
Right.
It's always been a brand which is even for myself and my partners in the past, my team members, whenever we sort of confirm L'Oréal for a project, it was always an exciting moment, and sometimes we didn't even realize why.
Right.
It was just really always. I think you've definitely maintained that throughout the years, and I always see that you guys are always doing very innovative things, and it's always very exciting, and so obviously HR plays a key part in that, which is great as well.
Absolutely.
So throughout your career, obviously you've been on quite a long journey now. What are some of the major successes that you've achieved over your career that you're most proud of?
Yeah, that's a good question. The thing that I could tell you, that I sort of I've been sort of the key milestone of my career would be building building employer reputation. I remember when I was at Kraft at that time in France, we built a very strong sort of junior internship program that really enhanced our employer branding. I remember when I was the HR director at PepsiCo in France, we really sort of got into same thing. How do we improve our attractivity from the outside? And we became, the number three best place to work in France. And after that, when I left France to go to London, the country stayed number one for a few years after I left. So there was a foundation that I built, I think, with the teams there to really make the organization stronger. And whilst I've been in L'Oréal in the US, there are a number of brands that we've acquired from the outside that we've integrated pretty seamlessly within the organization. So, those are examples of things that I when I look back at my career, I'm pretty proud of what we've done. But those things, to be honest, I thought about that question, and those are examples I wanted to share with you. But the thing that makes me the most proud of what I've done in my career when I look back, and those are the things that will remain, are the people that I've worked with and developed, Chris, along the way.
Yeah.
And why, this makes me the most proud, because those are the most gratifying moments. I was at a dinner actually a couple of weeks ago with an ex-colleague of Kraft. We worked together more than 20 years ago, and he actually shared with me the impact I had at that time on his career. And he's today extremely senior. He's the CEO of the Americas of a big CPG. And of course, I remembered what I did for him at that time, but I had no clue I had that impact. And the number of people like that, that's what I will remember. And the most gratifying is that I stayed connected to most of them. So that's what I would, the success I want to remember.
Yeah, I definitely share that with you. I think that is the ultimate gratification. I started my career very young, as I mentioned earlier when we spoke, at 17 years old, and I remember when I first transitioned to being a manager, and I got my first sort of one or two recruits on my team, which was always very an interesting period where you're in that new transition. But there's no better feeling seeing someone walking through the door as a graduate, no idea, in this corporate world. They're obviously very nervous, and then seeing them develop and their confidence grow over the months, and then they start sort of easing into the role. They're taking on more responsibility. There's nothing better than that. In the last business I worked in, one of the things I was known for on my team, we had about 15 members on my team, was anyone that was struggling in different departments in the business, I would invite them into our team. And we sort of created sort of a nurturing environment where everyone on my team, it's a culture where they would all help each other. And I'm saying that it might sound obvious, but in a very sales-driven environment, that's normally not the case. It's normally everyone for themselves. And that's how it works. But for me, I knew that for my team to grow and for us to be successful, I needed to build a culture where everyone was to help each other. So whenever I had a new guy come into the business, everyone in the team was automatically helping them in every way they could. And for me, sitting back and looking at that, it wasn't even about my own success. It was about seeing my team and everyone else develop, and there's nothing better than that. And I do think that's something I do miss, because I have a smaller team now, of course, and I do miss those periods. And when everyone asks me that, they always expect that I'm going to say, it's the financial rewards or the building this project, but it's always about the people. Hence why I'm still in this industry as well. So really good to hear that from you. And it seems like the obvious answer, but not many people do actually give me that answer. But it just shows you're in the right place. That's great. L'Oréal's lucky to have you. So what are some of your personal goals then? I suppose it's always easy to look inside in the business, but what are some of your personal goals, and how do they align with your business?
Some my personal goal as a head of HR or true personal goals?
True personal goals. Yeah,
personal goals, my wife and I are raising 5 children. over two continents. Some of them are on this side of the pond, and some of them are in Scotland. It's trying to be the best parents we can in the context of two senior I would say senior executive working parents. So it's really trying to maximize the time we have with our children, making sure that now we're raising 5 teenagers. So it's balancing the sort of requirements of a busy job with still, when we're all together, give them the undivided attention they want and they need, and help them grow as well as future adults, and continue to be hopefully a role model for them in making sure they don't lose sight of what's really important in life, Chris. We do have out of the 5 children, we have 2 children with special needs, and I can tell you this has been a I would say a blessing in disguise in a way, because this helps you balance your life and prioritize what's important. So that's from a personal standpoint. Taking a big job, I know the first year is always extremely busy, but it's never lose sight of what's important in your life and what role model you want to be as a parent.
I suppose it's about making sure you have this perspective, right? It gives you perspective as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people do lose sight of simply having perspective and keeping the perspective of what's actually going on around you.
Right.
I can definitely relate to that in some ways. As my siblings all just left home recently, which my parents were happy about in the beginning, and now they're upset because we're all gone now. And right. My mum just actually adopted 2 children with special needs. Which she's obviously an amazing woman. First and foremost, she raised us four kids on her own whilst working, which wasn't easy. And now she's adopted 2 more. So but again, it's about that balance, right? And that's what makes her happy, and her joy comes from giving those children a better life. But how do you? So what's one practical thing that you do which allows you to keep that balance?
I always try to be back home for dinner when I don't have a dinner, a professional dinner. I try to be home for dinner, so that this is a sacred moment for the family that we spend together. It doesn't mean, of course, that I'm not going to be back on email and I don't do what I have to do after that, and they know it. But this is the sacred time that my wife and I and the kids have agreed, to keep and protect, because this is our way to reconnect, and this is the moment where the family cell get back together and get reunited. So that this is what we do.
Yeah, fantastic. It's always important, isn't it, just to completely step away, and the fact that you have that consistent time that's always going to be there for you and the family is so important. It's vital, because you may look back on that in many years to come, and that time, there's one thing we don't have more of, and that's time. Right. So whilst you have it, you have to make the most of it.
Exactly, and everyone needs to. I think your point about perspective is spot on. Everyone needs to find their own way to keep perspective. For me, for me and my wife and the families to have a dinner all together pretty much every night, which means I rarely leave the office after 6:15 or 6:30, because I want to be home for dinner. But it could be something different for somebody else. As long as people keep that perspective in check, it's what matters.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with us. I think it's always important to see the balance between family life and work, and there is a fine balance there, and you have to get that right. It's always going to be difficult, especially in a role like yourself. I think you have definitely a larger challenge than most people, which is a credit to you and a credit to your wife. to be able to have that balance and have that understanding amongst each other, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you, Chris.
Moving back towards the business, what sort of HR skills do you feel would be more important in the future?
So it's right now the world is changing so fast, Chris. Whether it's the world of HR, of course, but the business world is changing very fast. And certainly, if I look not only in my industry but also across various industries, what HR needs right now is a very different set of skills than HR needed when I started 25 years ago. So if I had to narrow down the sort of key skills that I'm asking my HR team to really own on is one, to be very strong in managing the change. Because today, that's we know this is something that's consistent. The world is going to continue to change, which means helping leaders to adapt, helping employees to adapt and to go through that change. It's helping people to upskill, themselves so that they can keep themselves relevant. So everything that is around managing the change, whether it's for employees or leader, is a critical skill of HR. As a consequence as well, there are a number of there is specific skill that is being required right now. And when I speak to my colleagues outside of the world of beauty, this is something that comes back as well, is the skills around organizational design. We know that today, an organization that had a sort of lifespan of 3 to 4 years, few years ago, is now 12 to 18 months. It's as fast as that, which means you need to, and it doesn't mean transform completely an organization, but being able to pivot and understand what's working, what you need to tweak, what you need to fine tune, reinvent. Some of the new, skills that are coming up on the market. It really requires the leader to think about their organization almost on a 12 to 18 month basis. And if you don't have a strong HR partner who can help you, think about, the number of layers, how do you build center of expertise, what type of interaction will you have in a matrix, you're not going to be able to set up a strong organization. So this would be the second one. And the third one that for me is key is obviously someone in HR who is very proficient with data.
Yeah.
Today, analytics and data in the world of digital are something that we have to deal with on a daily basis from an HR standpoint. And if you cannot, and today you can see the impact in the world of recruiting, in the world of developing talent. If you're not comfortable to get into analytics to drive, better talent decision, you're missing the point.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question actually, and it's something which is a huge challenge for everyone that I'm working with, and it is very, very much still in its early infancy of the impact it's actually going to have on the business or on HR. So how are you currently leveraging technology to your advantage at the moment?
So we're the world of beauty has been transformed now in the past few years by social media, digital, direct to consumer, personalization. So I think we've been fortunate on the business side to be at the forefront of that digital transformation from a business standpoint. And from a people perspective, certainly we're testing a number of experimentation, Chris. And you might have heard of Unilever because they've communicated very broadly in the past few weeks, but they're using a technology now to hire their entry people, junior people in the organization through chatbots, and everything is now digitalized. So we're testing at L'Oréal a number a number of experiments like that in the world of recruitment, but also in the world of talent. So we're working with a number of startups and technology company, and we're leading. I mean, we're experimenting in various parts of the world. You know, in the U.S., as an example, we've launched an app for people to you know, connect with each other. It's called Never Eat Alone. So we're doing a pilot. We've just in understanding how people, you know, sort of what triggers their engagement and what doesn't. You know, we've launched, you know, something in the U.S., an ethnographic survey as well that is being tested in one of our divisions. So we have a number. We also are testing right now some social listening on our employees to see who are the sort of leaders in terms of engagement. So we're doing a lot of things with digital, and you said it's a challenge. For me, Chris, it's an exciting opportunity. It's
it is exactly.
a new world. It's a new world, you know, and it's a world where you need to try things, learn from it, and you know, either implement more broadly or do something different. And that's what's exciting. This is a world where you were talking about what skills HR needs to have. There's one particular trait that HR needs to have right now is being agile.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's never been more of an exciting time to work in HR with all of the change that's going through. The difference is whether you're going to embrace it or not. And that's
right.
And that's the key thing with a lot of the senior leaders. You have to embrace the change and understand that. It's funny you was talking about chatbots. I just built a chatbot for our website to actually, for the exact purpose of helping our members find information more. So when you first go on our website, you may have saw there's a pop-up that comes up. And if you click that you'd like to continue, then we basically send you the podcast directly to your Facebook Messenger every single time it's released. So it's just an easier way for us to engage. Or if someone has a question, we can then take that question offline and speak to them in whichever social media app they would like. If they would like to talk with us through their WhatsApp, we can talk through their WhatsApp. If they like to talk to us through Facebook Messenger, we can continue that way. Or share information. If I do one post now on our website, it will now go to every single one of our members across all of the social media platforms. And things like chatbots, they may seem like a very scary thing to people that aren't sure about what they are, but in reality, it's very simple. It's very simple. And immediately when I first came across chatbots, my first thought was, this is a huge opportunity for HR. Huge opportunity for businesses to engage with their employees and to gather intelligence on a scale that you've never would have been able to do before. So really happy to hear that you guys are doing that, and it seems that you're fully embraced in that change. So really good to hear that. It's certainly not the same for everyone that we're working with, and it's something that's just new. And it's really funny when I look at when I started in speaking to HR leaders, 10 years ago. If you would have told me that I'll be talking to HR leaders about chatbots and technology 10 years later, you would have said that I'm crazy. So this is the way things develop. Back then, the most important thing was HR in the boardroom. That was sort of the buzzword. We've come a long way, a long way since then.
And for me, this is a great opportunity to really focus on becoming much more employee centric. The technology will help us as an organization to do that. That's why I'm rallying the team and the leaders around that, because this is a unique opportunity for us to be more employee centric.
Yeah, and it's also communicating with them in ways that they're used to.
Absolutely.
Talk about the younger generation that you're going to be attracted into your business. This is a normal way that they communicate on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
So they're going to be more likely to respond, and there's going to be more uptake if you actually respond to how they learn and how they consume information. So fantastic, really, really good to hear that. So where do you see sort of the biggest opportunity for improvement within HR at the moment, within your HR department, and how will this help the business to deliver on its key objectives?
So, the biggest opportunity today that I see, I would start by HR. I think today we have been maybe used to deliver a number of transactional services in the world of HR. I think if we can, thanks to digital and the technology, share that ownership with the leaders in terms of owning their talent, providing them the platform to make those decisions, we can definitely continue to streamline our processes, make them more, engaging in a way for both the leaders and the employees, and we can focus on new experiments, on also, talent analytics, talent prediction. This is the biggest opportunity that I see today in the HR function, is becoming even more strategic when it comes to anticipating some of the business movements when it comes to the change I was mentioning in the organizational design.
So is that being more reactive rather than, or more proactive, rather than reactive?
Yeah, more proactive, absolutely. So that's one. The second piece would be around, I think by doing so and providing that talent intelligence across the organization, we can foster better collaboration, better movements, and also, help the organization, become better at collaboration in general. And last, I think we can also help the leader, becoming more of a sort of, talent stewards in a way, by empowering them with their team. So for me, it's really bringing back that employee centricity at the core, and giving the tool and the platform from a technology standpoint that's gonna foster that.
Fantastic. Well, look, that leads us nicely on to the quick fire round, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions. But you only have 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
All right. Yeah, I am.
No pressure. What's the number one thing that was sort of holding you back from becoming a HR leader?
So I think the biggest thing for me was that I did not believe in myself as much as other people did believe in me. And the day I realized that, it was the day I really took off and went to a new and so that I could get to new jobs and new perspective.
Mm-hmm. And what was responsible for that change? What gave you that sort of fire?
A couple of people that really pushed me outside of my comfort zone. And I must say, moving to the U.S. in an environment where being confidence here is at the core of the culture of the country, and this has helped me.
Fantastic. What's the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
My first boss, when I started to work in France almost 30 years ago now, told me the bullet's that's gonna hit you, Stephane, has already left the gun. So start moving. And I guess, I didn't realize all of the extent of what he was telling me at that time, but what it sort of triggered all along my career is an ability for me to always think about what's next. And
fantastic.
What's next,
I really like that one.
what's next in terms of not only job, but what's next in life, and really develop from, intrinsically my ability to think about options for myself.
Fantastic. And so what's one book that you would recommend for our audience, and why?
I would say 2 books. One that is for me has been sort of very foundational as an HR professional, and although it's an old one, it's still a goodie. It's the HR Champions by Dave Ulrich.
Yeah, very well.
One of the very strong one, and the other one that I'm reading right now, that one of my good friends gave me to read, is View from the Top. It's a book that is co-authored by a number of professors, keynote speaker like Dave Ulrich as well, Dick Antoine, the previous head of HR at P&G, and it's for me, it's a very good one.
Fantastic. And share one internet resource that you use to increase your productivity and stay in tune with current events.
So two. One is the BBC. I always in the morning when I wake up, I always look at the BBC, CNN, and a couple of others, but the BBC is probably my main one, and the other one is Instagram. In the world of in the world of beauty, if you want to stay connected, you need to know what's going on in that social media world. So those are the two I'm using.
Fantastic. You're the second person actually today to mention the BBC, which actually was to me actually a bit of a surprise, but that's clearly a great tool that's working for everyone. The SVP over at Mondi that I spoke to also mentioned that exactly the same as yourself. So there's clearly something that they're doing right there.
Yeah.
What's one thing that about your business that you're most excited about today?
So the most exciting piece is that the world of beauty is moving so fast, and the big players that used to be Unilever, P&G, and us, we could spend a lot of dollar in media, and it was easy to get some share of voice. Now, with the new world of digital, small brands can come up and do incredibly well thanks to social media. So every day, what excites me in our world is it's a very complex one, and every day is never like every day is a new day and will be different from the last one. So that's what's exciting.
Fantastic. Well, look, you've given us some great actionable advice, and I know that our members will be better off for it. So thank you for that. Give our listeners one parting piece of guidance, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. So my piece of advice and piece of guidance as we depart is really to make sure that every HR leader spend time to mentor other people. I've benefited from extraordinary mentors in my life, and I still have many of them around, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without those mentors. So I think it's worth for all of us spending time mentoring others around us and give back.
Fantastic. Look, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
It was a
guys,
pleasure.
head over to fantastic. Guys, head over to hrleaders.com. There you'll find all of the show notes from the episode, everything we've been talking about, timestamps, links to all of the resources. Stephane, thank you again for sharing your journey with us today, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
A pleasure, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.